So, picture this. It's the end of the 19th century. A totally new movement is sweeping across Europe, changing everything from buildings to paintings. But you know where it got really personal, really breathtaking? In jewelry. So let's dive into the world of Art Nouveau jewelry, where, believe me, every single piece has a story to tell. Okay, so to really get what was so revolutionary about this, we have to go back to one simple but honestly radical question that artists started asking. They looked at all the big, flashy jewelry of the time and thought, what if the point isn't about showing off the biggest diamond? What if it's about wearing a genuine piece of art? I mean, just think about that. That one little question, it literally changed everything. All right, so this slide really breaks it down, right? You can see the two worlds colliding. On one side, you've got status. That was the old way of doing things. Super rigid, perfectly symmetrical, and all about the bling, diamonds, diamonds, diamonds. But then you have art. This was the new idea. It was all about flowing lines, asymmetry, and celebrating materials like opals and enamel for how beautiful they were, not just how much they cost. A total game changer. All right, Section 1, a rebellion in style, the problem with Victorian jewelry. So, you might be asking, where did this all come from? Why the rebellion? Well, it was a direct pushback against what was happening in the late 19th century. Think about it. The official art world felt kind of stale. Creativity was just being crushed by all these stuffy, old-school rules. And a huge part of that was the Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden, mass production was the name of the game. Now, on the one hand, that's great. More people could afford jewelry. But on the other hand, everything started to look the same. It was so uniform, and people started to get tired of it. They began to crave something unique, something personal, something that felt like it was made by a real artist, not just stamped out by a machine. So here's the solution. Section 2, the language of nature, a new visual philosophy. The answer was to just completely break from the past. Artists basically tore up the old rule book. Instead of looking at dusty history books for inspiration, they just looked out the window. They decided to build a whole new visual language from the ground up, and nature was going to be their dictionary. And that, right there, became the core mission of Art Nouveau. This wasn't just about making pretty stuff. No. It was way bigger than that. It was about creating a truly modern style for a new, modern era. A style that would finally blur those old, snobby lines between the fine arts, painting and sculpture, and the so-called applied arts, like making jewelry. So what did this new nature-based language actually look like? Well, the playbook was pulled straight from the natural world. You see these incredible curving lines of plants, like irises and poppies. You see the impossibly delicate wings of dragonflies and butterflies. And of course, there's that iconic female figure, usually with this long, flowing hair that just seems to melt right into the plants and flowers around her. It's all very dreamlike. And this philosophy, it's captured perfectly in this one idea. The aim was not to display ostentatious luxury, but to provide an artistic experience. I mean, just let that sink in. The whole point wasn't to scream, "Look how rich I am." It was to give the person wearing it, and really anyone who saw it, a real artistic moment. Jewelry was, for maybe the first time, becoming a portable work of art. Okay, next up, Section 3, Masters of the Craft. New artists, new materials. Look, a philosophy this new needed a whole new kind of artist to bring it to life. We're not just talking about jewelers here, we're talking about true visionaries, people who completely reimagined what jewelry could even be made of. And if there's one name you absolutely have to know from this period, it's René Lalique. This guy was the undisputed champion, the French master. He just perfectly captured the whole spirit of the movement, mixing nature, beauty, and these revolutionary techniques that nobody had ever seen before. Seriously, in his hands, a necklace or a brooch wasn't just jewelry. It was a tiny wearable sculpture. And this table, wow, it really shows you just how radical this materials revolution was. I mean, look at this. Artists like Lalique just threw the old rulebook out. Diamonds, they took a backseat to something like an opal, with all its mysterious color. Gold and platinum, they were often swapped out for things like horn, or glass, or ivory. Why? Because you could carve them and shape them into these incredible forms. It was all about the final artistic vision, not the price tag. And to get these amazing effects, they had to invent or perfect some unbelievable techniques. Okay, take plique azure enamel. The best way to think about it is like making a tiny stained glass window, but with no glass behind it. It's an insanely difficult process.
You build this little metal frame, you fill it with enamel powder, you fire it, but the result? Oh man, you get this see-through, glowing effect that's just perfect for making something like the translucent wings of a dragonfly come to life.
Now, Lalique was definitely the rock star, but he wasn't a solo act. This was a whole scene. You had guys like Georges Fouquet, who worked with the famous artist Alphonse Mucha, the guy who did all those iconic posters. Well, Fouquet basically turned his art into jewelry. Then there was Lucien Gaillard, who was heavily inspired by the art of Japan. And Henri Wever, who made these incredible mythological pieces for serious art collectors. It was this amazing, buzzing, creative environment.
All right, section 4. A style goes global, from Paris to the world. And believe me, this was not just a little thing happening in Paris. Thanks to these masters, the whole idea of Art Nouveau basically exploded onto the international scene. It really captured the world's imagination.
So, if you look at the timeline, Art Nouveau was kind of like a shooting star. It burned incredibly bright, but for a pretty short time. It starts bubbling up around the late 1880s. Its absolute peak, its big moment, was the 1900 Paris World's Fair. But then, World War I happens, the world changes forever, and the style starts to fade away as a new one takes its place. And this is so cool. It shows you just how far this style traveled. We call it Art Nouveau because that's the French name, but it had different names all over Europe. In Germany and Austria, they called it Jugendstil, which means youth style. So good, right? In England, it was just the modern style, and in Italy, the Liberty style. So lots of different names, but the core idea was exactly the same everywhere. A new kind of art inspired by nature. Okay, final section, the lasting bloom, an immortal idea. So, if the style itself kind of faded away after the war, what was left? What's its legacy? Well, think of it like a beautiful flower. It might only bloom for one season, but it leaves behind seeds that grow into something new. The idea itself never really died. So, what took its place? Well, the world changed dramatically, and so did art. All those organic, flowing, natural lines of Art Nouveau, they were replaced by the sleek, sharp look of Art Deco. It's like night and day. Art Deco was all about geometry, straight lines, and the speed of the new machine age. The rebellion of nature kind of paved the way for a whole new kind of modern. So, when you boil it all down, what's the lasting legacy of Art Nouveau? It's this. It completely changed how we think about jewelry. It permanently lifted it from just being decoration to being a real, respected art form. It proved that the artist's skill and vision were way more important than just the cost of the gold and gems. And that idea, that's still influencing designers right now, today. And that brings us right back to where we started. If jewelry really is a portable work of art, this amazing idea Art Nouveau gave us, well, it kind of makes you look at things differently, doesn't it? It makes you think not just about what you're putting on, but about the story it tells. So, I'll leave you with this thought. What masterpiece are you going to wear today?